Good evening, everybody. My name is Betsy Fischer Martin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Women in Politics Institute at American University. And welcome to our virtual series, Women on Wednesdays. We are so glad that you're here. For those of you new to one of our events, WPI is a nonprofit and nonpartisan institute in AU School of Public Affairs that aims to close the gender gap in political leadership. And we offer academic and practical campaign training, and we facilitate research and discussions like this on women in politics and leadership. So tonight we are honored to have with us the first woman in US history to run a presidential campaign. And her candidate was not just any candidate. He was her older brother, Joe Biden, and the year was 1987 when he embarked on the first of 3 runs for the White House. Valerie Biden Owens, she has been by her brother's side in life and in politics her entire life. In fact, she ran also his very first campaign for the Senate back in 1972 when he was 29 years old and she was 26 years old. And then she, of course, went on to run all of his Senate reelection bids over the years. So she shares those stories about their incredible life together as a team and part of the larger Biden family in her new book, Growing Up Biden, which is now a New York Times bestseller. So congratulations, Valerie.
Thank you.
Before you start,
I want to let more time. Just say that one more time.
Exactly. New York Times best-selling author. But before we start, I want to let everybody know we are going to save plenty of time for your questions. So on the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a button that says "Ask a question." Please Q&A. Please do that during the course of our discussion. You'll also be able to upvote questions from others that you're interested in. So please go ahead and participate in that process. We'd love to hear what's on your mind. And if you miss any of the discussion or you want to share it with friends, the replay of this will be available on our WPI website or on our Crowdcast page, and we'll be sure to put the link for that in the chat. So Valerie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I understand where you're. What state are you in? You're not at home.
I'm in New Orleans.
That's right. You know, that's a country all unto itself.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm here in by Vanderbilt by our friend John Meacham in Nashville, and in a beautiful hotel. So I'm happy to be here talking to you.
Terrific. Well, we're so glad that you're here. The book is terrific. I would encourage anybody to read it. I mean, you've got some fun stories in there. You've got some heartbreaking stories in there, but it's really a terrific read. So tell us just first of all, I'm sure writing a memoir is a daunting task, but give us a sense of why you wrote this and what ultimately you hope readers are going to take away from it.
Well, I'm a storyteller, and what I've done, most of the stories in the book I have written years ago, and that's what I do. I sit down, and it's a great way. You know, some people can sing or play the piano. Well, I write. And the reason that the hard part of the book was not the writing, but it was putting it all together to make some sense, to have a flow, and asking myself, like, who cares? You know, why does this matter? And what I hope to get from the book is if a reader picks it up, and when she puts it down after having read even a chapter, she said, oh my gosh, I see myself there, or that's my father, or that reminds me of my brother. Because what I think, Betsy, is that the threads of family, the threads that make the fabric of family, which are commitment and loyalty and love, and then heartbreak and disappointment and loss, I think they run through most middle-class American families we grew up in the mid 20th century. And we were just ordinary kids in an ordinary neighborhood, and who had wonderful parents, and who told us that, you know, we were a gift to each other, brothers and sisters. There was family, and there was family, and there was family. And what I found out is that we're not unlike many families. And long-winded answer, but it's the connective tissues that we need now more than ever I think in our society. And one of the things we need most is empathy, not as in, I mean, it's a fancy word just to mean to feel. So it's a book about growing up Biden. It's a book about the magic of families, not my family, but your family. Perhaps you'll see some part of your family in it too. That would make me, as the author, very happy.
And here's the cover of the book. So give us a sense of this cast of characters on the front here.
Well, I want you to know that what a cool little girl I was. You see my cuffs of my jeans, they match my shirt. I thought that was the coolest thing in the whole world. And that's Mom, Jean Finnegan Biden. Frankie, the youngest, is on her lap. Joe, who looks exactly the same, is right there. And there's Jimmy at the very end eating an apple, who is the instigator. And he's the imp. I mean, if you look at him again, things haven't changed. He is always the mischief man in the family. So, you know, no matter how old you get, I don't know. How big is your family, Betsy? Do you have siblings?
I just have one sister. We're just a year and a half apart.
Is she the older or younger?
She's the baby.
She's the baby. And forever,
Yeah.
you'll be
Yeah.
70 years old, 80 years old. She'll always still be the baby. Well, that's the way
Exactly.
it is with our family. Joe's the eldest. I'm the only. Jimmy's the instigator, and Frankie's the baby. And it's universal, I think.
Yeah. Well, you write about, older brothers usually, when they have a little sister, pretend that they don't even know their kid's sister,
Yeah.
right? But you write about Joe Biden was different. Tell us about that.
Well, from the time I remember, honest to God, the time I opened my eyes, my big brother put out his hand and he said, "Come on, Val, we got things to do and places to go and people to see." And I hopped on his bicycle and, we went off. He took me with him every place he went. And when his friend said, "Why did you bring a girl?" He said, "She's not a girl. She's my sister." He told me and this is not an exaggeration. He told me that whatever he could do, he said, I could do it better, even though it was impossible. I mean, he was years older and stronger and bigger than I, but he said, if he could do it, he said, you could do it. And he made me believe in myself. And I thought that I owed it to him and to myself to try to be that little girl who he thought I could be. So my little legs pumped just as hard to keep up with him because he said I could. And I did. He made me believe.
Yeah. And so tell us about sort of the family dynamics in the early growing up. I mean, you mentioned, obviously you're the only girl. You've got these brothers. Tell us what that dynamic was in the Biden family when you all were coming of age and growing up.
Well, it was a great place to be. It was wonderful being the only, because I was I was the fair-haired child, and being the only girl. And I'm sure that I took advantage of it with my brothers and instigating them. But my mom said, and dad, but dad was out of the house working. Mom was in the house working. So they both shared the same values. But we were raised with three basic pillars, which were faith, family, and responsibility. And the responsibility was to take care of one another, and then the community at large afterwards. But we were, when we walked out of the house, we were Bidens. That, not like Rockefellers or Kennedys or Whitneys or somebody important. We were the four Biden kids, and our job was to stick together. And God forbid if we ever turned on one another. I mean, when we got in the house, we could argue just like normal siblings did. And my brother Joe instituted a program, believe it or Joe, the politician, which we would have family meetings. And if one of us had a grievance or a grudge, like normal kids, four normal kids, and any one of us could call a family meeting. My parents did not get involved. We would go upstairs in the bedroom, shut the door, and say, you really hurt my feelings, or why did you do that? I'm so mad at you. And we would get out the hurt, talk about it, figure out what was wrong, make amends, say I'm sorry, open up the door and go back out again. We took care of, we governed ourselves within, but we never turned on one another when we walked out the door.
And you write about a lot of lessons from your parents, and one of them you said from your mother was beware the righteous.
Yeah, I tease my mother was a wonderful woman. I say she was the rose of Sharon, but she also had thorns. She was beautiful, but she was strong. Don't go after her kids or, her family. And my mom died, which was 2009. My brothers, and I joked, we had to have some happiness on her tombstone. I said, my brothers wanted to put, here rests the most wonderful, magnificent, blessed mother in the entire universe. And I said, hey guys, it's mom. What we should put on mom's tombstone is what she drilled into our heads from the time we were little, which was beware the righteous on the right and on the left. And her words ring so true today, because you can't argue with the righteous. You can't move them because, I'm right. And besides, if I'm right, I also have God on my side. So don't challenge me. I don't, you got to be open to at least to listen and to try to understand a different perspective of, or we're never going to get any place in the world, and particularly keeping our democracy together.
Right. And so as you all grow up, politics really became a family calling.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how that developed and how it really was a family affair and everybody working on the campaigns.
Well, it didn't, it wasn't a set plan. It was Joe, from the time he was in grade school, he was president of this, as his class. And, he was always in governance from the time he was a kid. And so when it came time for him in 1972, when he was going to run for the Senate, against a wonderful man who in 1972, I should back up a little bit. There was a combustible relationship between youth and the issues at the time. And the issues in 1972 were for civil rights, to end the war in Vietnam, and to save planet Earth. They were the three things that we ran on. And I was the only one who took Joe serious. Joe said he's going to run for the Senate. And he said, so will you be my campaign manager? And, we didn't know what we didn't know. So therefore, we were not inhibited. We just jumped in. My father was 62 or 63 at the time. He looked the part of a senator. So, he would go around. They thought my dad was the candidate. My mom was the coffee chair. The reason we were all involved, Betsy, is because we had no influence. We had no money. We knew no one in power, and we didn't have a Democratic Party that was structured in the state of Delaware. So nobody wanted to run against Caleb Boggs. These were the issues that Joe felt so strongly about. What we did have is passion and commitment and creativity and the best candidate, and a reason to run, a reason to bring this energy to begin to change the direction of the country. So we improvised. It wasn't that we were going to just keep it this family affair. No, again, nobody took us seriously. It was the Rose Garden strategy with Republicans. If they didn't acknowledge us, we didn't exist. And, we asked everybody we knew to help us. That friend, and asked that friend to ask their friend. And we won by an astonishing 3,163 votes in the year, the McGovern-Nixon landslide year. Everybody in the state voted for Nixon, but 3,163 less voted for Joe for the Senate. So it just happened. We were in it, we just did it. Jimmy Biden was the fundraiser, and Frankie Biden was the volunteer coordinator. Again, we didn't have any pros. We didn't know any better. So we weren't brilliant. We were just eager and anxious and ready to go.
And then, so when it came time for re-election 6 years later, it was, get the band back together in a lot of ways, right? You were going to run that, you were running that campaign, but there were also the big heavy hitter political consultant guys then in the mix. And you write about that experience. And certainly a woman in politics, women were usually, the volunteer coordinator types or doing envelopes. They were not running campaigns. And you write about sort of the senior media advisor who kind of patted you on the head and said, don't you worry your pretty little head about these radio buys. Meanwhile, you're the campaign manager.
Yeah. And you too, in your career, have experienced it, I am sure, and to be the successful woman you are now. In 1978, I guess, was the next campaign. Now Joe is this great young hope of the Democratic Party. People recognize us, and surely we needed to get control. But surely, his sister, she's a token. She's a token woman, and she's a token relative. But what they didn't understand is when I had it a lot easier than a lot of women, because my brother pulled up a chair at the table, and at the table were all men, figuratively speaking. Right. And he said, "This is my sister. What she says goes. She speaks for me. Nothing goes out of this office without her approval." So that he had trust in me, because I had a PhD in Joe. I didn't have a PhD in political science. And so he could go out and do what only he could do, which was talk to the voters, listen to their values, share his values, share their vision. And he knew that back at the ranch, the headquarters, everything was going to be fine. And the big guns, who are all, again, I'm sure there were some women someplace, but I'm figuratively speaking, they were all men. It was a boys' playing field. And they did not think that it was my place. And so sometimes I had to set things straight. The good thing was, Betsy, with my father, who was a wonderful man, and my three brothers, I was not intimidated by men. I liked them. I enjoyed them. I understood. And, there were still people up through the election for president in 2008 who didn't buy that a woman should be involved, but they didn't last too long. I don't mean tough guy, but they just figured out that it was real. Excuse me, my allergies.
Well, no worries. You all made this great team, and you write about this in the book because you each brought something different to the table. I think you said, he saw the forest while I watched the trees, right? And so you could, really work well together and balance each other out.
Yeah, and the example that I use in the book is when I was a freshman at the University of Delaware. He was a junior, and he had a double major, political science and history. And it was my first hourly exam. I was a good student in high school. I was very Spitsbat Catholic girls' school. I wanted to get an A and did my homework. But I had my first big exam, and we used to write them in the blue book, which the kids who are listening now at the university probably, they don't even know what a blue book is.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. And I was so there was one course left that Joe needed to fulfill his requirement for this double major. And it was modern European history, and it was the survey course that I was taking as a freshman. So he said, "Don't worry about this, Val. We got it." Boys and girls couldn't be in the same dorm, but I was over in the common rooms, and he spent one whole afternoon of going through this survey course in modern European history. And I could say he explained to me why these great movements happened, what swept across the continent. And I was saying, yes, there were 7,300 soldiers, and they had red uniforms on, and their general was so-and-so. And, they took the capital of such and such. And that's how it always worked with us. And I remember that first exam, he got a 98 and I got a 97.
Oh, no.
Because he threw in about what capitals that they stormed and how they did it and the tactics.
Yeah, I was going to say, he probably wrote an extra 10 pages, right? He probably, in Joe Biden style, went long, right?
yeah, that's exactly right. So he took care of, his is the grand vision, and I filled in the movements, how to get from tree to tree, you know, how to get the volunteers to move. But it was always his vision.
Another story that you tell in the book about you all working together. This was, I think, later in one of his campaigns, I think in probably the late 80s, where you had approved a campaign ad. Because typically, as you mentioned, you know, you would sign off on a lot of these things that he maybe didn't have the time to look at. And he obviously trusted you. You talk about kind of being known as the Biden whisperer, and you say, well, yeah, that was basically true. But you all, you tell us a funny story about this campaign ad.
Yeah, it was it was a guy named Joe Slade White. And I hired him in the 95 campaign, 96 campaign. And every ad that went out, I would approve every single word, but Joe always saw it. I mean, I just didn't go off on my own and create ads. I mean, it was always, you know, Joe's playbook. I told him about this ad, and apparently he forgot. And he was in at a meeting, a breakfast meeting with some men who were in the agricultural community in downstate Delaware. And they grabbed Joe and said, Biden, basically, what the hell are you doing? There's our radio, we didn't have our own TV station. Philadelphia was where we bought our media market. It was the 5th most expensive media market in the state. And we had one shot of going on the last 5 days of the campaign because we had a barrage of negative ads and we had to come through with something to respond. And the man told him all the things that were wrong with the ad. And my brother called me and said, Val, is this true? And I said, yeah. He said, I'll be right there. And it's 2 hours. He drove up in 2 hours. And I've seen the look on his face directed at a lot of people, but never at me. And he leaned over the desk and he said, what the hell were you thinking? There's no words in the ad. It never mentions my name. It just has a picture. What were you thinking? And I said, I thought it was the best political ad I've ever seen. And he walked around the table, bent down, kissed me on the forehead, and it said, why the hell didn't you tell me that in the first place? And he walked out of the office. And I said, wait a minute, Joe, I have it all teed up. You can see it. He said, no, I don't want to see it. If that's okay, that's okay. So that was one. I skipped to and then there was one, and I just realized you asked me about the one in 1987, which is another whole story.
Similar story though, right?
Yeah, similar stories that the media consultant, this one in the 95, it was the voter who was complaining. The one in 80, it was the media consultant that I wouldn't do what he wanted to do. And he called my brother at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, my brother thought somebody died. And he said, no, the problem is your sister. What's the problem? Well, she won't let us run this ad. We want to run it by you. And he said, if she says no, then don't bother. Thanks. Good night. He hung up. And that's why I like working for my brother or with my brother.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to talk a little bit about the personal parts that you share a lot in the book. And of course, you write about certainly the, horrific car accident that claimed the lives of, your brother's wife and daughter. I think most people probably know that because he's obviously talked a lot about it over the years, but I'm sure that was hard for you to kind of recount that because it was a day obviously of, that was terrible.
Yeah, but Betsy, what I had to do to write a true story is I had to put the good and the bad in.
Right.
There's no perfect family. There is no family without heartbreak. There is no family without tragedy. I mean, it's tragic events in families. Tragedy is an equal opportunity offender. It hits all of us. So you can't talk about the good without talking about the bad. And that was a terrible. Joe had just been elected in 1972. At the time, he was the youngest senator. We were told at the time he was the youngest senator in history. He wasn't, but he was just 29 years old when he was elected. Right. He had to wait for his birthday to be sworn in. And Joe and I were down in Washington hiring staff. He was elected on November 7th, 1972. And on December 18th, when we were in Washington, D.C., Nelia, his late wife, and his daughter, Naomi, who was 13 months old, and the two boys, Bo and Hunt, were in a station wagon. They were hit broadside with the tractor trailer. Nelia and the baby died immediately, and Bo and Hunt were seriously injured and for, months of recovery. So it was a terrible time. But what followed was a time of healing. I mean, out of that tragedy, we were able to stick together, the whole family. I mean, like mom said, there's family and there's family and there's family.
Right.
And you don't ask like, well, what can I do for you? How can you help? You just jump in and do whatever it is to be done. Right. And so I moved in with my brother to help raise the boys. And I said, I'll stay until it's time to go.
Yeah. And you were essentially their mother for several years. And you write about, being Aunt Val, and, you stayed in the house and took them everywhere, and
they were a gift.
Packed their lunches and everything.
Yeah, Nelia was mommy, and I never wanted to replace or try to replace mommy and the memory of mommy. And I always wanted to leave a place, room enough for my brother, who was just turned 30 years old, that he would find love again in someone. So I wanted to leave a space that was big enough for a new love to come into his life, which he, as I said, he did 5 years later when he married Jill. So I was Aunt Val. I was full-time Aunt Val. They were my boys. I say they were my training wheels to, have my own 3 children. And they were such a magical gift. And every single day I thanked God for them. And I would say to Nelia, I promise you, I will love them as if they were my own. And they are my own. They turned the accident. They were 2 and 3, and they turned 3 and 4 that February. So 3 months later. And so, but they healed all of us, because we all had a purpose to make the boys' lives better, to get up and to keep going. And they saved my brother's life, and they saved all of us. Yeah.
I like this picture in the book of all the brothers.
Yeah, that was for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. So we gave, and it was after the accident, 2 years later. And that's what we gave him, a portrait of all of the family. And it's funny, for all those campaigns and all those pictures, we didn't have one of all of us together. So that was our present to mom and dad.
That was it. You also write, it's funny in the book too, because you have almost a little bit of kind of a rom-com going on with your future husband.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very much of a, you guys, he was, your brother, one of his best friends, and you all butted heads over the years and somehow ended up together.
No. I mean, for God's sakes, it took him 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. But that's my husband, Jack. And he went to law school with Joe, and they met on the first day of law school, and they became instant friends. And I was a junior at college at the time, and Joe's first year at law school. And I was going up to see him. It was the October weekend. It was the homecoming weekend at Syracuse. And my brother said to me, Valerie, I've got just the guy for you when you come up. And I thought, oh God, Joe, if my brother's fixing me up with somebody, I'm not interested. He didn't like anybody he didn't know. And then he didn't like anybody he did know to date me. So I said, Joey, I'm not interested. I got a guy back here. I'm kind of interested. And he said, no. But the kicker was Nelia, who got on the phone, and she said, her expression was, I promise you. And she said, I promise you, Valerie, if I could pick any guy in the world for you, I would pick Jack Owens. And I thought, that's interesting. And I said, okay, one night. So I went up, and went to the homecoming football game. And Betsy, he didn't like me. I mean, can you believe it? I was
And
there.
you didn't like him either, you right?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, he was this uptown kid from New York City, and yeah, he didn't. My brother had trumpets going, dun, da, da, here's my sister, isn't she wonderful? And Jack said, not so much. So it took us a long time, and it took Jack came after Amelia died, and spent a lot of time, Jack and my brother Jimmy Biden, with Joe, just being friends. And it was, Jack and I became friends long before we fell in love with each other, but we did have a rough patch, and we'll be married 47 years in October. And still, I got to whip him a line every now and then, Betsy, you just got to keep him on his toes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you all have 3 children.
Yes. They are a girl, boy, girl. And they truly are a gift. And they've been raised with the same mentality that they have each other's backs. They're each other's best friends. So we're fortunate. Our children have raised us well. They've been very good to me and Jack.
I want to ask you a little bit more about, the role of women in politics. And this is, I love this picture too of you. This was, I guess, one of the victory nights.
Yeah, that was either 78 or the one after that. I forget what I put in the book when I researched it. Yeah, that's it. Look how young we were. Jeez.
I know. But you write about, something that a lot of successful women have is this kind of imposter syndrome. And you write about that in the book.
Yeah.
Share your thoughts on that with
well,
folks.
I think for anyone who will listen to me, I think confidence is the number one prerequisite for success in life. And as I said, I was fortunate. I had a mom and dad, and I had my brother who told me I could do anything that he could do, and I could do it better. Even with that, when you go in, women, again, I'm making vast generalizations, but there's a lot of truth to them. We think to get into a new job or to take a risk that we have to know everything. Like, I couldn't do that job, or I wouldn't apply for that job because I don't know enough about that subject. Men just go and say, well, I'll learn it. I'll figure it out as I go along. We're a lot more spit spat. We got to have all our ducks in a row, and then we'll go in. And then when we go in and we realize we're pretty damn smart, like, wow, I didn't know I could do it. And can I really do this? Yeah, I'm really doing this, because we've got women now are helping each other a lot more than they did when I started out. Women, we were not our sister's keeper. We were not good. There was one spot in the room, one seat, one place on the ladder. And when that woman got there, she didn't look down to help us up. She said, this is one spot and it's mine, and I'm keeping it. I've earned it. Now we've changed, and we do much more mentoring and sponsoring, which is a different. Mentoring is, come on, I know, let me help you. But sponsoring is, let me help you by giving you this task and throwing you in the water. I'm standing here, I'm going to help you out of the water if you start to drown, but you can do this. So it's confidence. And when I give remarks, there's a phrase that I use, is that confidence is as real as water. I mean, sometimes what I say in the book is, sometimes it flows, sometimes it freezes. Like, I remember, standing there, like giving a speech or trying to make an argument, and all of a sudden just freezing, like, oh, Christ. And feeling the confidence just drain right out of you. And you gotta say and remind yourself that, you can do it. We women forget we are the vital cog in the supply chain. Without us, there's nothing. And we are power. And what I don't know if I'm answering your question, but one of the phrases that drives me not crazy, but is that we're all about empowering women. I said, hell, we're not empowering women. We have the power. What we are about is creating opportunity, because we've been boxed in. And we've got to, we have to help other women. We also have to show men. I mean, they don't have to be afraid of us. You can't solve the world's problems when you only use half the brain power, half the passion, half the creativity. It goes both ways. We got to learn to work with the men, and they got to learn to work with us, and we will be a whole lot better for it. But sometimes, I don't know, I still think, I remember, I'm going on too long, but my daughter, our youngest, went to Harvard. I never knew anybody who went to Harvard. We were Catholic school kids, and we got a good education, but I mean, Harvard was like, wow, that's really a big deal. And the little one went there, and I was positive she would be successful. Yeah, go, you can do this. She didn't have any qualms about it. She knew she could do it. When I went to be a resident fellow at the Institute of Politics, I thought, wait a minute, do they have the wrong person? They're asking me at Harvard? And I thought, yeah, why not? And I remember giving a speech at International Women's Day to the Harvard Law School. And I said to the people in attendance, I said, my dad's deceased, and my brother's the vice president of the United States, and my dad would be really proud of him. But you know what he's even prouder of? I'm standing here at Harvard Law School giving a speech on International Women's Day. And my father would say, that a girl. And that's what we got to do. And so imposter syndrome still lays buried beneath, but we can't let it, we got to kick the fanny and keep moving.
Well, there's a question along those similar lines from someone who's asking, what is an example of how you may use your power to uplift other women?
Well, I hope that at the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware, just like what you do at American University, and again, I think I'm sure it is building confidence. And you know what happens? Praise is very, very valuable tool. Not praise in, oh, you are so cute, I could eat you with a spoon. Not that praise, but praise in that, you know what? I just watched you take a classroom and turn those students around with your example. You were the team leader, and you brought them all together, and you came out with this solution. And that's the best solution that this class has seen. You are really good. That kind of praise matters. And we have to support each other, and we have to Betsy, it in your profession. So everybody bothers to tell you what you did wrong. How many times do people come up and tell you what you really did right? Right. And that's what we got to, not phony, not. Yeah.
And especially like you said, with specifics, not just great job, but what.
Yeah, like great job. Tell me how. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Did that answer that question?
Yeah, that's great. Here's another question from Jamie, who's actually one of our grad assistants at the Institute. She says, what advice do you have for young women who are looking to get into campaign politics?
Just go. First of all, if you're interested in politics, period, the very best training ground is a campaign. Because in a campaign, you're thrown in and you rise to the occasion. They need intelligent, creative, intuitive people. So you don't get hung up. If you're good and you're smart and you jump in, you can move up the ranks very quickly. And to get involved in elective office, I say to young women and to young men, there are 3 prerequisites. First of all, get your personal life, make sure your personal life is in order. And I'm not talking about, CIA films and going through the garbage and old letters. I'm talking about your support system. Going outside in politics, it's incoming. You're being hit on all angles from your opponents and whatever. It's a tough sport. So unless you have, when you come home, unless you have a spouse a partner, your mom or dad. If you've got a mom and dad who are sick that you've been used to spending time with and they are upset that you're not there, or you've got kids, you need home to be a safe haven. So you need support. The second thing is know what it's worth losing over. Not why you want to win, but what stand will you take that it's worth losing over? And if you got those two things, then I think you're ready. And the training ground, as I said, go local, go now. We Democrats, our biggest problem, I think, over the years, we didn't have a backbench. We're looking at going for senators and governors. Yeah, school boards. Look what school boards are doing across this country. Get involved in your local. That's the hardest politics, because the people, your community, they know where you live. 2 streets over, third house down, as opposed to living in Washington and being somewhat more isolated unless you go home often. So get in the campaign, test it out, and look, if not you, then what was it Plato said? I think if you don't get involved in politics, then you'll be destined to be governed by people less than you. So do it or be quiet about it.
Good advice. Good advice. We have another question here about, well, you mentioned losing, and I guess the question has to do with, obviously there's success stories that we see in the Joe Biden campaigns, right, being elected, but running for president 3 times, obviously, well, he wasn't successful those first 2 times. And the question is, can you give us an insight about his struggles on this long journey and how those struggles affect family relationships?
Well, we ran in '87, and were it not for an omission of a slip of the tongue, we would still be in it. But he had a bigger duty. His job was to be a U.S. senator and conduct the board hearings. His aspiration was to be president. So he did his job. In the next time that we ran, we started out as a testing the waters, and we got in over our head before we were ready. And the good part about that 2008 election, really the good part was when we lost that one. The first one was tough to lose because it was a character assassination against for me.
Right.
My brother forgave. It was our Democratic opponent, not the Republican opponent.
Right.
So my brother forgave. He forgives a whole lot easier than I. But with the 2008, we lost, but it was okay because we won. We would win either way because we had Hillary, the first woman, not just being the first woman, but the strong, absolute candidate, or Barack Obama. One of them was going to win, the first African-American, the first woman, which is a Democrat's dream. And they were both powerful, positive, good people. So leaving that race was okay. And then this last one, it was not in the cards, 2020. We were not going again. It is, were it not for Charlottesville, like my brother didn't wake up after that and say, like, oh God, I got to be president. I got one more time to be president. I got to, we didn't run. The one prior to that with Trump, because it was right after Bo's death, wasn't time. We had a heal. But because of Charlottesville, Joe said, I cannot look myself in the mirror and walk away because I'm afraid. And I'm afraid. He grew up fighting bullies. When he was a kid, he stuttered. He couldn't string more than 3 words together at a time. And he knows what it's like to be pushed around by a bully. And he said, bully, our former president, is not going to push me around and the country around. And I got to stand up. I can't walk away because I'm afraid of a bully. And were it not for him, that man, and that instance, we would never have engaged. I was not for it in the beginning because I knew this man, the former president, would stop at nothing to destroy my brother and my family. my expectations were exceeded and still continue to be. But Joe was the right person at the right time for the right job. I can see it. No one else could be sitting there in that Oval Office than he.
Well, and you alluded to 2016. Talk a little bit more about that decision, because obviously your brother had lost his son tragically to brain cancer. And you write about you didn't think that he should run. You thought that the price was going to be too high, but there were obviously other members of the family that did want him to run.
Yeah, no, not in 2020. I did not want him. My first reaction was, don't run. No. The price is going to be too high, because we were running against a man who was, I thought, not worthy to be a president. But
in 2016,
but the one before that, we could not we. Yes, we as a family, but Joe. Yes. Joe's the one who runs. He's the one who's president. So it's about Joe. Bo died in May of 2015, May 30th. There was, when you run for president, you have to give your whole heart and soul to the American people, and because you represent them and you're holding our democracy. There was no way that my brother, the year before Bo was given a death sentence. You know, he had glioblastoma. He was 46 years old. And we all kept saying he's going to make it. He's going to be the 1%. But, you know, he had maybe 13 months at most. But there's always the hope that people break through. So that year leading up to getting the nomination, are you going to be in Iowa for the caucus goers? Are you going to be in New Hampshire for the primary? You're going to be in Florida? You're going to be in Nevada? No, you're going to be by your son's bed when he goes and he gets these horrific, spectacular, wonderful, experimental. He was lucky. The advances in medicine, but they're grueling. And so he couldn't, it wasn't a choice. You stay with your child. And then Bo died in May, and there was no heart to give to the American people. There was no soul to give to the American people. He was hollow. We were all hollow. Bo was our collective child of the family. And it was, I am a practicing Catholic, but I am telling you, boy, some of the conversations I had with God, if I say in the book, if I had a baseball bat, I would have crashed every stained glass window. It's like, why? But you get up and you keep moving, and he's president of the United States now. It wasn't time. It's just, we couldn't do it.
Timing. Speaking of religion, we have a question from Max, who says, a question about faith. He says, what does your faith mean to you and Joe? How does your faith drive you and Joe to be better people and make a difference? And how does your faith relate to you and your brother's political lives?
Well, it's presumptuous. Thank you, whoever asked the question, but it's presumptuous to say that my faith makes me or Joe a better person. I appreciate the goodwill. I hope it does. But look, but we're the product of a middle-class Irish Catholic family. We went to mass on Sunday. We went to Catholic school. We didn't eat meat on Friday, but we weren't pious. We didn't sit. We were just normal kids. But what the faith, we were expected to live our faith, because the social justice doctrine of the Catholic Church that the nuns taught us at school reinforced with our family values. So it was a seamless, solid rod that held us. And there's an expression, it's Hebrews 11:1, that it says, faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is, Kierkegaard, faith sees best in the dark. you know, for me, I need, and my brother's very similar, something bigger than myself to hold on to. Like we think we're in control and we're just driving down that road and we're going on our way and we're making it. And bam, life is a way of interrupting. You know, it just, it's not, and it's not how many times it interrupts. As my dad said, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get back up. And faith was, I take solace in the rosary, or I take solace in saying my prayers to Saint Teresa, because it's more than me. I have to believe that there's something more than me. I hope it makes me a better person and my brother a better person, but you know, I don't know how else to answer it without seeing unctuous or pious. I'm not trying to be pious and wear it on my sleeve. It works. I say the rosary and I feel better.
Well, you did have a funny story in the book about meeting the Pope and calling in a chit with your brother.
Yeah, that's true. I was pregnant. I have 3 children. My husband and I, he says he's part of this. My husband and I have 3 children. And there is a little bit of drama queen in me. I had 3 difficult pregnancies. And thank God I had these healthy children. But my second pregnancy, I was in bed with our son. I didn't know it was a son at the time. And I was 8 months pregnant. And I was very worried about the birth and about the well-being of my child. And I'm bedridden and I'm watching TV, and it's during the Carter administration, and Pope John Paul was coming to America, and the White House was hosting him. And so President Carter invited the Catholic senators and their spouses to come to the White House to meet the Pope. And I hopped out of that bed, which I wasn't supposed to, grab the phone, and I called Joe, and he's in a meeting, and I said, get him now. And I said, Joe, the Pope is coming. I've got to see the Pope. Back and forth. He said, okay. He calls me back up half an hour later. He said, I got bad news. He said, I can deliver anybody, but I can't deliver the Pope. The White House says it's only the spouse, the senator and spouse. And I said, oh. So he calls me back again. He said, Jill said, it's okay. Look, she's not Catholic. She's blonde. And so I'm not going to pass as 8 months pregnant and brunette for his svelte blonde wife. But she said, you take her spot. Turns out the doctors wouldn't let me go. Too big of a risk. But I did get to go to St. Charles Seminary, which is about 40 minutes from my house, where the Pope went the next day. But I called, I said, Joe, you don't understand. This answer. I said, you do not understand. I want to see the Pope. And I hung up on him. And he said, oh God, I've never done that. And I didn't. The reason I wanted to see the Pope was not because if there was something wrong with my baby that he would bless me and I would be cured. I mean, it wasn't that. It was that I thought if I saw the Pope and he blessed me and my child, that I would have the strength and the courage to deal with whatever it was that I was worried about dealing with. And instead I had a beautiful baby boy, and it was okay. But I wasn't seeing him for a miracle. I was seeing him for strength.
Yeah. I guess just a final question for you. Have you ever thought about running for office yourself?
No, yes. I mean, I've been asked, and but I had the best of both worlds with my brothers running for office. I got to be the boss and, manage his campaigns. And when he was and then on the off years, I would have a baby, and then I'd be ready, to go back when the baby was 3 or 4 for the next campaign. And while he was in Washington doing events that he had to in Washington, if there are things at home in Delaware that he had to attend to, I could go and represent him if I wanted to. So I was able to stay active, to be involved, and to stay, for me, keep myself. I wanted to keep myself sharp and aware. But I was able to go back to real life of raising. I had the gift of being able to raise our children and be at home with them. And then I could go back and forth in and out of the business, because it's really hard, as you know, women know. It's not, you don't balance work and child. There's no balance. It's always an imbalance. You're just juggling, and you try and make it work. And it's really hard. And especially if you're a single working mom, my hat's off to them. It's with all the help that I had with a full family support. It was still hard. But no, I didn't. I was asked.
Now they're grown though. So
yeah, but Joe still isn't.
All
I
right.
got another campaign left in me, so
Yeah.
No, I'm great. I'm very happy with everything.
Well, Valerie, we just so appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. It was great to talk to you. The book was terrific.
Thank you.
Want to thank you and congratulations again on the bestseller. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
I'm looking forward to reading your husband's book. I'm going to order as soon as I get off on Amazon right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Okay.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.